You can also, again, feel live wires behind walls, all sorts of other things. Now, for those of you who might be sort of squeamish, this next slide might be a little bit troublesome. But then, after doing the first Sogeti conference that I went to, I implanted a fairly large implant. Yeah, I get that reaction a lot. As you can see, it has some LEDs behind it, and it was taking my temperature once every 5 seconds, kicking it out over Bluetooth, and I was able to monitor my body temperature. We built a thermostat at my house to say when I got cold, it would heat my house up, and when I got warm, it would cool it down. Unfortunately, it didn't work very well, and every time I went out for a cigarette, my girlfriend got mad because the house would get really cold. Yeah, so, and again, this kind of highlights why we do this self-experimentation, because the concepts of usability here are a completely verdant field for exploration. So, when I got this magnet implanted, it didn't take very long. Once the novelty kind of wore off, I started to build devices to talk to the magnet. I built a little rangefinder thing that would let me feel through my magnet when things were getting closer and further away from this device. And so I'd be able to pick it up and walk around the room with my eyes closed, using only my magnet as my only sensory organ to navigate the world. But what was interesting was I was struck with a sense of blindness. And so it really bothered me, not really knowing that I was being exposed to these sorts of things and that sort of stuff. Now, we continued on and built some more extensive implants. This is somebody who implanted our lightable LED implant into his chest, and then that's me and another person that works with me. So this is the sort of thing that I'm interested in. Now, the brain is a pattern recognition device, and it looks at things that repeat over and over again, and then uses them to make predictions about the world in which we live. And from my perspective, the more data, the better, and the more data we have, the better we can navigate the world and solve the problems that we find ourselves facing in the modern world, and given the accelerating rate of technology. And so I started to kind of get this impression that maybe we should be looking at the human being as an animal with predictable behaviors, and that kind of gave me some insight into how best I feel we should be moving forward, which again is to merge man with his technology rather than letting technology leave us behind or run rampant. So the philosophers that talk about the dangers and the ethical problems, I think that they tend to be stuck in this sort of fear-mongering state where they say we should pump the brakes, we should not be doing this, we should really slow down, and an overarching question of, is it even ethical to use technology in this way? But I'd like to take this from a very, very different perspective. I think we have a moral imperative to re-engineer the human being, and I will explain why. Basically, we believe that we tend to have a cultural acceptance that human beings stop evolving from the neck up. But the fact is our brains are pre-biased. They're biased towards various behaviors that have very little to do with the world that we live in now. We're constantly being tricked by our own brain into behaving in certain ways, and then we don't really understand exactly why we did it. And then our brain gives us this sort of feeling like, well, it was your choice, and then it makes a bunch of really weird rationalizations. And I don't really understand why people are so enamored with staying in the natural state that we're in. I believe that all environments, including the planet, have a load-bearing capacity for life and progress and technology and these sorts of things. I think we may have overshot ours by many-fold. And this has me very concerned because we have extremely advanced technology, but we are effectively the same thing that we were in the Ice Age. And a lot of times around my lab, we make the joke that you shouldn't teach monkeys to use guns. It's just a really bad idea because they will come out of the jungle and they'll shoot you. So we are basically monkeys with high-tech digital fiber optic cable. And that is not necessarily good, because it takes 2,000 calories just to sit on our lazy asses and make snarky comments on the internet. And I think that that's kind of a waste. So, one example that I tend to give is that a study that was repeated many times over showed that if you're handed a warm beverage, you are more inclined to trust someone. Well, salesmen figured this out, and of course now use it to make you more pliable to the techniques of sales. Now, we can think of really great evolutionary reasons that this behavior would have arisen. However, in the modern context, we find that it is a direct window to exploiting us. And interestingly, that exploitation is something that we've tried to we've acknowledged, but only in a backdoor sort of way. So in America, at least, we have a law that says any major purchase that you make, you have 3 days to take it back. Now what's weird is we all think we're all making our own decisions, but we have this law that basically says if you were somehow spellbound by this sort of salesman's tactic, well, in that case, you have to be protected from yourself and your own decisions. Another really great example of this is blood sugar. So let's picture an example of a man who maybe has skipped breakfast and lunch, and he comes home, and normally he would be happy to hear the laughter and jubilance of his children, but today he comes home and he yells at his children. And he can't really figure out why, when he finally has had his dinner, why was he so upset? Well, the fact is, if you think about the Ice Age, if your blood sugar dips low, you should be primed for aggression, because chances are you're going to have to wrestle something to the ground, kill it with your bare hands, and then eat it raw. That requires a pretty heavy amount of aggression. And this is something that we need to be worried about, because we have all of these vestigial behaviors that are running around, and in the context of the modern world, they're no longer helpful, and nor are they necessarily useful to moving along. And we do this with all sorts of, we understand that all sorts of behaviors have natural inclinations. We know that people can be mathematically gifted, we know that people can be athletically gifted, but we don't really think about people as having talent in the domain of self-control. We don't consider people to be moral or philosophical geniuses. However, I think that this is a really big thing. It is understanding that not everyone has the same level of self-control. And so when you start to look at how other people are tortured by their own weakness, they can't figure out why they can't, say, diet or quit smoking, which is certainly my case. These are the things that in the modern world we see these examples of people with heavy amounts of self-control, and we can't figure out why we can't get there. And that's the average person. The average person will have self-control issues. So, the thing is that self-control is actually not good for biological life. It's not a property that biological life should have. If you are the